This is another fishing podcast.
Walleyes After Dark on Cinemax. Here it goes. How, where Jason Mitchell finds walleyes after dark. There's a 30-ish minute window we call the flash bite on lakes, on lots of lakes where walleyes are snapping at sunset. After that, the flasher goes blank. Now what? Go home? No, I don't think so. We're not going home. Because we've got these to catch. Here's Jason Mitchell holding a mighty fine walleye, big old girthy thing, okay? And I know that some people are listening to this podcast, so I will try to do a better job of describing what I'm bringing up on the video podcast here. If you are listening, you can watch the video podcast on our Angling Uploaded YouTube channel. Check it out. Go search Angling Uploaded on YouTube, and you can watch the video podcast. So let's get into this article here. These are details from Jason Mitchell's. I'm going to have to, my mouth is very dry. This is details from Jason Mitchell's virtual angling. Virtual angling, I believe that is an online magazine, okay, that Jason Mitchell has. Check it out, Jason Mitchell's Virtual Angling. Not all bodies of water offer solid night fishing opportunities for walleye, but there are so many notable fisheries where we have traditionally caught the majority of fish, or sometimes the largest fish, long after the witching hour when the sun sinks to the horizon. Often we figure out one window movement of fish, and when we quit marking fish, we assume that bite is over. The bite might indeed be over if we don't make any adjustments, but the reality is that we can prolong the bite and keep catching fish if we move with the fish. The toughest aspect of catching walleye well after dark is forgetting some of the lessons we tend to learn during the day. So often, finding and catching walleyes is all about reading structure and focusing on edges. After dark, however, you can throw that edge mentality out the window. My favorite after dark locations and patterns are not necessarily classic walleye structure or break lines that are close to deeper water. Typically, large flats or even basins and large shelves shine after dark. Walleyes will often push up and roam much shallower water than you'd think. I'm going to tell a little... That's super interesting. I'm going to give you sometimes I believe fish totally just follow contour lines. They are just, especially in clear water, they are following contour lines like highways. I've seen it as a kid. I used to live in Northern California, and there was this reservoir that I used to fish, and every morning when you'd go into this one cove, and it was an early morning thing. I want to say it was like right at sunrise. Water was super clear. You could see a creek channel that came. The creek channel was super prominent in the middle of this cove that we were in. I used to fish with a buddy like all the time. He's seen this too. Isaac Wilson, shout out to Isaac Wilson. And we'd fish together at this, like we'd just come to this cove all the time because we knew what would happen. The sun was just coming up, and a huge pack of largemouth bass would follow that creek channel in. Okay. And once they got to the shallow part of the cove, they would then just disperse onto the flat to feed. It was so textbook, I couldn't believe it. It just has stuck with me all these years because it was so textbook. These fish were following the creek channel in. They followed it in. They followed it in like it was a highway. It was amazing. And then once they got shallow, they dispersed out onto the flat. Okay, so that's... Fish definitely follow contours, but that reminds me of, let me bring up, where are we at here? We are, I believe, right here. Oh gosh, what am I on? I'm on this one now. Yeah, so Jason's talking about how fish, once that sun goes down, those walleyes in the daytime, they are relating to those edges, But once that sun goes down, they're moving off into those flats where there's no edges. It's just they're moving off to feed. And it's really cool when fish are doing that. So the problem with ice fishing is that you need to be mobile. I believe he gets into this. So I've seen fish, and obviously it's a different species, but I've seen fish behave similarly to what Jason is describing. Obviously this happened in the daytime, but what happened with these, what I'm describing, but those fish, they were feeding at a low light period. Is very early in the morning when they did this. So there's my dog. Oh my gosh, my dog, little Pepe. I have a dog. Let me just digress for a second. Yeah, I have a dog upstairs that is a very nervous dog. And whenever I'm doing stuff like that, he's upstairs and he's sitting at the steps right at the at the top there above me, and he's just whining. Whenever I'm down here working, he's just whining, wants to be down here, he's anxious, drives me up a wall. But you might hear my wife come down and bring him down. I got a little dog bed right here. You might hear my wife come down and bring him down and set him down to be next to me because he feels more comfortable around me. And I think me podcasting right now is driving him. It's causing him to become an anxious ball of nerves. He's a Chihuahua Terrier mix. So it's just it's a breed of dog that's just constantly, anxious. So if you hear barking, you hear, my wife's upstairs trying to control our little Pocachon. I don't know what Pocachon means, but it's become his nickname. He's Poco Loco sometimes. He's Pocachon. His real name is Scratch. But let's get back into this, okay? Anyway, walleyes will often push up and roam much shallower water than you'd think. Okay, so back to Jason here. Jason says, I use the white-tailed deer analogy a lot when describing walleye patterns and movements. During the day, deer might follow an edge, but come middle of the night, they might be standing out in the middle of a soybean field that is several hundred acres. Walleyes can also be just as random after dark. That's super interesting. Because the exact location of fish can be so random on large flats and shelves, fishing these areas takes a certain kind of mentality. You can spread out tip-ups to increase the chances of contacting these roaming fish, or you can fish out of a shelter. But in this situation, you have to realize that the fish are going to have to find you. That's like so much of just ice fishing in general, is that your mobility is hampered, especially if you don't have an ATV or a snowmobile. I think it's just, with some exceptions, I think sturgeon fishing, like we've actually talked about this on this last live stream. Sturgeon fishing, it depends on, if you have a lot of sturgeon in your system. But there's some species that maybe you don't want to move around so much. Sturgeon fishing on the St. Croix is an example of that. This isn't a situation where you can necessarily move around to find these random fish. Set up so that at some point during the night, these fish find you. What makes after dark patterns for walleye so much fun is that these fish are typically much more aggressive, and these fish are looking for a meal. On some fisheries, walleyes will also be more apt to eat much higher in the water column well after dark. We have seen many scenarios where we caught more walleye after dark by fishing halfway down in the water column, especially for big fish. This is particularly true for set rods and tip-ups with big bait. Don't expect activity all night long. Wait out the windows because 90% of the activity will happen during 10% of the time. So yes, that is good information there that I found on Target Walleye. And Jason, let me make sure that I get that right. That came from his, let's see here. It comes from his virtual angling app. It might be from his app. Check out Jason Mitchell's virtual angling. It's either an app, I should know this, or a newsletter. And I think he also has a virtual angling YouTube channel. But anyway, Jason Mitchell's virtual angling, just Google that and you'll be able to learn all kinds of stuff. You'll be able to tap into Jason Mitchell's brain, which will immediately make you an excellent fisherman.